today, knowing we're doing this, are gonna, okay, this is gonna be...
Mick Fleetwood has spent decades defining rock and roll with Fleetwood Mac, from their blues roots to becoming one of the biggest bands in history. But when he hit the road for his last tour, something unexpected happened. It wasn't just another round of classic hits. There was a deeper reason behind it, a reason that remained hidden for a long time. What drove him to take that stage one last time? The answer is more surprising than you can imagine. Mick Fleetwood was born on June 24, 1947, in Redruth, Cornwall, a small town known for its tin mines. When he was just 6 months old, his father's job in the Royal Air Force took the family to Egypt. Living near the pyramids and hearing the lively beats of Egyptian music left a mark on Mick, even though he didn't realize it at the time. When Mick turned 13, his life changed. He wasn't interested in school and spent most of his time tapping out rhythms on anything he could find. Seeing this, his parents bought him his first drum kit. It wasn't expensive, but it was everything to Mick. His father, who secretly loved jazz, gave him his first lessons, showing him basic patterns he'd later use in some of Fleetwood Mac's biggest hits. School didn't get any easier for Mick, though. By the time he was 15, he had had enough. One day, after a rough morning, he left school, sat under a tree, and promised himself that he would follow his love for music, no matter what. His parents supported him in a way that was rare at the time. They let him drop out of school and move to London to live with his sister. It was a bold choice, but it gave Mick the freedom to focus on what he truly loved. In London, Mick's real music education began. He spent nights in clubs, soaking up the sounds of the city's blues scene. Things started to change when Mick met Peter Bardens, a keyboard player who lived just a few doors away. One day, Peter heard Mick practicing and knocked on his door. He asked Mick if he wanted to join his band, the Cheneys. This was the break Mick had been waiting for. Just a few weeks later, they played their first gig at a famous blues club in London. By the end of 1963, the Cheneys were playing in clubs all over London. One night, they even got to open for the Rolling Stones. Mick was amazed by their drummer, Charlie Watts, and spent the entire night watching how he played. That moment inspired Mick and shaped the way he played drums for years to come. In 1964, the Cheneys opened for another big band, the Yardbirds, who had a young Eric Clapton on guitar. Clapton noticed Mick's drumming, and the two became friends. That same night, Mick met John McVie, a bassist who played with John Mayall's Bluesbreakers. Although they didn't know it at the time, Mick and John would later form one of the most famous bands in rock history. After a while, Mick decided to leave the Cheneys and joined a new group, the Bow Street Runners. They had just won a big music contest on TV, which came with a recording deal and a lot of attention. Mick thought this might be his big break. The band recorded a single, but it didn't do well, and arguments within the group quickly led to Mick leaving after just a few months. Mick's next big moment came in 1965, when he met John Mayall at a club in London. Mayall was the leader of a famous blues band that had Eric Clapton as its guitarist. During a break at one of their shows, Mick introduced himself and even got to play a few songs with the band. Mayall liked what he heard and invited Mick to officially join his band a couple of years later. Playing with Mayall was like going to school for the blues. Mick spent hours listening to old records of legendary blues musicians, but as his talent grew, so did his bad habits. Mick started drinking heavily, and it began to affect his playing. One night, after a disastrous performance, Mayall fired him. It was a tough moment, but it turned out to be a blessing. Not long after, guitarist Peter Green left Mayall's band too. That night, Mick and Peter decided to form a band. But Peter wanted his old Bluesbreakers bandmate, John McVie, to join them as the bassist. While John didn't want to leave his steady job with Mayall, Peter came up with a clever trick. He named the band Fleetwood Mac, using Mick's last name and part of John's name, hoping this would convince John to join. At first, it didn't work. So they started with a temporary bassist, Bob Brunning, who agreed to step aside if John changed his mind. Luckily, Peter's plan worked, and a few months later, John joined the group, completing the original lineup. Fleetwood Mac started out as a blues band, heavily inspired by Chicago blues. Their music was raw and soulful, with Peter's guitar skills and voice leading the way. In 1968, they recorded their first album in just 3 days, spending only £700. Despite being so simple, the album was a hit. It stayed on the UK charts for 37 weeks and reached number 4. Their first single didn't do well, but their second, Black Magic Woman, gained some attention, reaching number 37. A few years later, Santana turned it into a huge international hit. Then, their third single, an instrumental called Albatross, became a massive success. It hit number 1 in the UK in early 1969 and stayed on the charts for 22 weeks, making the band famous. Although they were making great music, things weren't perfect. Peter Green started to struggle with the pressures of fame and was using LSD more and more, which caused tension within the group. Even with these challenges, Fleetwood Mac worked hard and stayed creative. Between 1967 and 1970, they released 4 albums and several hit singles. Their live shows were legendary, with Peter's guitar solos sometimes lasting 45 minutes, leaving audiences in awe. On December 31st, 1974, Mick Fleetwood made a call that would change everything for Fleetwood Mac. He asked guitarist Lindsey Buckingham to join the band, but Buckingham had one condition. His girlfriend, Stevie Nicks, had to join too. Fleetwood didn't plan for this, but he agreed. On January 1st, 1975, Buckingham and Nicks officially joined the band. This decision would turn Fleetwood Mac into one of the biggest bands in history. Before they joined, Fleetwood Mac was known for British blues. With Buckingham's guitar skills and Nicks's dreamy voice and unique style, the band's sound became something new, an exciting mix of rock, pop, and folk. It all started because producer Keith Olsen played a song from Buckingham and Nicks's album, Frozen Love for Fleetwood. He was so impressed by Buckingham's guitar playing that he invited him into the band on the spot. With their new lineup, Fleetwood Mac released their self-titled album in 1975. It was a huge hit, full of catchy songs that showed their new direction. Christine McVie's upbeat tracks like Over My Head and Say You Love Me were instant favorites. Nicks's haunting Rhiannon brought a magical vibe to the album. This record sold over 7 million copies, a massive leap from their earlier albums, which barely made an impact in the US. Then came Rumours in 1977, and everything exploded. The album sold over 45 million copies worldwide and became one of the best-selling albums ever. It had hit after hit, Go Your Own Way, Dreams, Don't Stop, and You Make Loving Fun. Each song felt personal because it was. The band members were going through breakups, fights, and drama while making the album. Somehow, all that pain turned into incredible music. The relationships in the band were a mess. Buckingham and Nicks were breaking up after nearly 10 years together. They fought constantly in the studio, but their heartbreak inspired songs like Go Your Own Way and Dreams. Christine and John McVie were also splitting up. Christine had an affair and wrote You Make Loving Fun about it, but she lied to John, saying the song was about her dog to avoid more conflict. Meanwhile, Mick Fleetwood was dealing with his own problems, including a secret affair with Nicks. The band's personal lives were chaotic, but the music they created together was magic. Fast forward, in 2018, Fleetwood Mac made a big decision that shocked everyone. Lindsey Buckingham, who had been a key part of the band since 1974, was fired. This happened because he and the rest of the band couldn't agree on when to start their tour. Lindsey wanted to wait until late 2019, but Stevie Nicks and the others didn't want to wait that long. Stevie had just finished her own long solo tour and was ready to move forward. The tension between Lindsey and Stevie had been building for months. And after a performance in January, things got worse. The band decided they couldn't keep working with him, even though he had written some of their biggest songs. It was a tough choice, but Fleetwood Mac had faced changes before. This was the 13th time their lineup had changed. To replace Lindsay, the band made an unexpected move. They didn't hire just one person, but two. They brought in Mike Campbell, the guitarist from Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, and Neil Finn, the singer from Crowded House. Fans were surprised, but the new members fit in quickly. Christine McVie said it felt like they had known each other forever. Mike and Neil brought fresh energy to the band and opened up new possibilities for their music. Stevie was excited about performing older songs from the band's early days, before she and Lindsay joined. For example, they planned to play songs like Rattlesnake Shake and Station Man, which hadn't been played live in decades. By late April, the band was already taking photos together as the new lineup, and Mick Fleetwood called it a new beginning. Meanwhile, the new lineup started rehearsing in June 2018. They practiced 5 days a week for 2 months in a huge space in California. The band worked through more than 60 songs, including some they hadn't played live in years. Stevie was especially excited to sing Black Magic Woman, a song from their earliest days, written by their first guitarist, Peter Green. Mike Campbell's guitar style added a fresh sound to the old classics, and Neil Finn's voice gave new life to songs that Lindsay used to sing. By August, they had narrowed the list to about 24 songs, a mix of fan favorites and rare tracks. In September, the band moved into full production rehearsals at the Honda Center in Anaheim. They worked on every detail of the tour, from the stage design to the lights. The new stage had a walkway so the band could get closer to the fans. They also used over 200 moving lights and a giant screen for visuals. The set list included hits like The Chain and Go Your Own Way, but also surprises like Tell Me All the Things You Do. The tour, called An Evening with Fleetwood Mac, kicked off on October 3, 2018, in Tulsa, Oklahoma. It included 52 shows across North America and ended on April 5, 2019, in Philadelphia. Tickets sold out quickly, showing that fans were still excited to see Fleetwood Mac, even with the changes. Mick Fleetwood's world tours show why he's still such an important figure in music. His recent tour reached 8 countries, taking the magic of Fleetwood Mac to fans all over the world. From the United States to Europe, and even places like Dubai and Monte Carlo, Mick's music touched people everywhere. He even supports tribute acts like Rumours of Fleetwood Mac, which play in packed venues across the UK and beyond. No matter where the shows happen, fans feel the connection. It's proof that Fleetwood Mac's music speaks to everyone, no matter who they are or where they're from. These tours aren't small either. Mick performed in over 80 concerts during one tour alone. Each one was carefully planned to give fans the perfect mix of Fleetwood Mac's famous hits and hidden gems. Songs like The Chain and Dreams always light up the crowd, but Mick doesn't forget the band's blues roots. He includes songs like Albatross to honor the band's early days and its original leader, Peter Green. The shows aren't just concerts. They're a chance to relive decades of music history. Fans walk away feeling like they've been part of something truly special. Meanwhile, Mick's personal life has been full of ups and downs, especially when it comes to love and family. In 1970, he married Jenny Boyd, who was just 22 years old at the time. Jenny was the younger sister of Pattie Boyd, who was married to George Harrison of the Beatles. Mick was only 23 when they got married in a small ceremony in London. It seemed like the start of a happy life together, but things quickly became complicated. Mick was already busy with his growing music career, and balancing that with family life turned out to be much harder than he expected. In 1973, Mick's life was turned upside down. He found out that Jenny was having an affair with Bob Weston, who was not just a guitarist in Fleetwood Mac, but also one of Mick's close friends. Mick overheard a phone call between Jenny and Bob, and the betrayal broke his heart. He fired Bob from the band right away and canceled the rest of their tour. This moment didn't just hurt Mick personally. It also caused tension in the band and deeply affected his family life. Mick and Jenny had 2 daughters, Amy Rose and Lucy, and the fallout from the affair put their family under even more strain. Their marriage didn't survive, and they divorced in 1976. But in an unexpected twist, Mick and Jenny decided to try again and remarried in 1977. They hoped to fix their relationship for the sake of their daughters. Unfortunately, their second chance didn't last long. Mick was struggling to handle his career and personal life, and he later admitted that he hadn't given enough attention to his family. By 1978, they divorced for the second and final time. Their daughters were caught in the middle of this difficult time, and it left a lasting impact on them. As if all this wasn't enough, Mick's personal struggles were made worse by his cocaine addiction. During the peak of Fleetwood Mac's success, Mick's drug use got out of control. In a later interview, he admitted that his addiction was worse than anyone else's in the band. He said there was a time when he barely remembered anything because of his heavy drug use. The band became famous not just for their music, but also for their wild lifestyle, with Rumours claiming they went through miles of cocaine on tour. After the release of Rumours in 1977, Mick's addiction led to huge financial problems. By 1984, he had to file for bankruptcy because of debts that added up to millions of dollars. Mick's love life continued to be messy. After his final split with Jenny, he married Sarah Recker in 1988. Sarah was a close friend of Stevie Nicks, which caused problems in the band. This marriage didn't last either, and they divorced in 1995. Later that same year, Mick married Lynn Frankel, and they had twin daughters, Ruby and Tessa. But even this marriage ended in separation in 2013. During their divorce, Mick fought to keep control of his music royalties and earnings. Over the years, Mick has been married 3 times and has 4 children. Each relationship brought its own challenges and added to the struggles he was already facing. Fleetwood Mac's greatest success came with their album Rumours, which won the Grammy for Album of the Year in 1978. The band was falling apart while making the record. Romantic relationships were ending, and emotions were running high. Somehow, they turned all that pain into beautiful music. Rumours went on to sell over 40 million copies, making it one of the best-selling albums ever. Even though the band has only won 1 Grammy, they've been nominated 12 times for their incredible work over the years. In 1998, Fleetwood Mac was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. This was a big moment for the band and celebrated their long journey. The Hall of Fame didn't just honor the famous Rumours lineup, it also included the band's earlier blues musicians. During the ceremony, Mick gave a heartfelt speech, thanking every member who had been part of the band. That night, the group performed together, bringing back the magic of their classic era. Even decades later, Fleetwood Mac continues to inspire. In 2020, their song Dreams went viral when a TikTok video of a man skateboarding while drinking juice and lip-syncing to the song caught everyone's attention. The song climbed back onto the charts 43 years after it was first released. Mick joined the fun by recreating the video himself, showing his playful side and connecting with a younger audience. However, Mick Fleetwood's life isn't just about music. One of his biggest surprises is his love for photography, which started in 1967 when his bandmate John McVie gave him a camera. That gift changed everything. Over the years, Mick fell in love with taking pictures, and on his 65th birthday, he held his first big photo exhibition in Beverly Hills. Mick's photography is different. He likes to experiment. In 2016, he spent 3 straight days taking photos of his reflection on surfaces in Maui. During that time, he drank only black coffee and ate 1 banana. Out of over 15,000 photos, he picked just 87 for his collection. One of his more shocking projects was about nature reclaiming abandoned things. In one photo, he showed a car being swallowed by a tree. Later, people found out Mick had placed the car there himself months before taking the picture, sparking a lot of debate about his methods. Mick also cares deeply about the environment. In 2018, he announced a huge plan to create an artificial reef off Maui's coast. He wanted it to be the biggest in the world, using old ships and eco-friendly materials. To pay for it, Mick sold his favorite drum set, including the one he used to record Rumours. This upset Stevie Nicks, who thought it was like losing a piece of their band's history. But Mick believed in the project. Unfortunately, things didn't go smoothly. Legal problems with the US Navy slowed it down. And then, in 2021, a pod of whales beached near the reef's site. Mick immediately paused everything and ordered an environmental study to make sure he wasn't causing harm. In 2012, Mick opened a restaurant in Maui called Fleetwood's on Front Street. It became famous for its unique dishes, inspired by his travels, and a secret dining area called the Rumours Room. Only 11 people could eat there each night, and they had to sign agreements not to talk about what happened inside. Some people thought it was a place for private jam sessions or rare Fleetwood Mac memorabilia. Sadly, in 2023, wildfires destroyed the restaurant. The only thing left was a burnt snare drum Mick had used for recording Dreams. That drum now stands as a symbol of survival, as Mick works to rebuild. Mick has also dabbled in acting, and his most famous role was in The Running Man, 1987, where he played a resistance fighter. He also made a brief appearance in Stranger Things in 2022, playing himself in a fictional battle of the bands. This cameo made young people rediscover Fleetwood Mac's music, sending their song streams through the roof. Mick's business side is just as creative. He launched a line of bamboo drumsticks in the late 1990s, but faced criticism when people found out the bamboo came from protected forests. Mick quickly fixed the problem by moving production to Hawaii and planting a bamboo shoot for every drumstick sold. He also tried a wild idea to turn ocean waves into music, but that project didn't pan out. His most successful venture is his rum brand, Mick's Mojo. The rum is aged in barrels stored on boats that sail around the Hawaiian Islands, giving it a unique flavor. Mick even worked with marine biologists to make sure the boats wouldn't harm the environment.